I want to start with a question. How many of you have ever felt stuck, like you're trying, you're putting in the effort, but things just aren't moving fast enough? Maybe you're working towards something big, a dream, a change, a breakthrough, but the road feels longer than you expected. I see you, I hear you, and I want to tell you something that I've learned the hard way. You have to trust the process. And I know it sounds simple. It sounds like something we say when we don't have the answers. But trusting the process isn't about sitting back and hoping for the best. It's about showing up over and over again, even when the outcome is uncertain. It's about choosing courage over comfort. Trusting the process means stepping into discomfort, embracing uncertainty, and showing up even when the outcome is unclear. And let's be honest, discomfort is not something most of us willingly seek out. We are wired for self-protection, for choosing the path of least resistance, for staying in what feels safe and familiar. But here's the paradox. Everything we want, growth, success, fulfillment, exists outside of that comfort zone. Courage is not about being fearless. It's about being afraid and taking action anyway. It's about making the choice every single day to lean into the discomfort instead of avoiding it. It's about speaking up when your voice shakes, showing up when you'd rather retreat, and continuing forward when doubt tells you to stop. But here's the tricky part. Courage doesn't always come with immediate rewards. In fact, choosing courage over comfort often means facing resistance. It means feeling awkward, exposed, and even a little lost. It means being willing to stumble, to be misunderstood, to have moments where you wonder if it's even worth it. And that's where most people give up, because discomfort feels like a signal to stop. But in reality, discomfort is a sign that you're growing. Think about any great story of success or transformation. None of them happened in a straight, easy line. They happened in the messy, uncertain, and often painful middle. They happened because someone somewhere chose to keep going despite the discomfort. They trusted the process even when the process didn't make sense. And let's talk about the stories we tell ourselves. When we're in a moment of struggle, our inner dialogue often tries to convince us that we're not capable, that we're not ready, that we don't have what it takes. That's fear talking. That's the part of us that wants to stay safe, to stay in control, to avoid the risk of failure or rejection. But here's the truth. Courage is a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it becomes. And every time we choose to take one more step, to face one more challenge, we're proving to ourselves that we are braver than we think. This is what trusting the process looks like. It looks like showing up even when we don't have all the answers. It looks like leaning into uncertainty instead of running from it. It looks like choosing courage over comfort again and again until what once felt impossible becomes second nature. From the time we are young, we are taught to fear failure. We grow up believing that mistakes are something to avoid, that falling short is a reflection of our worth, and that success is a straight line from point A to point B. But the truth, the real, unfiltered truth, is that failure isn't the enemy of success. It's the foundation of it. Every person who has ever achieved something significant has failed, not once, but repeatedly. The difference isn't that successful people avoid failure, it's that they refuse to let it define them. They see failure not as a signal to stop, but as proof that they are trying, stretching, growing. They understand that every setback carries a lesson, every misstep a redirection, every disappointment a deeper layer of resilience being built. But here's the hard part. Failure hurts. It stings. It can feel like a personal attack, like evidence that we aren't good enough, smart enough, or strong enough. And in those moments, our instinct is to retreat, to convince ourselves that maybe we weren't meant for this, that maybe we should have played it safer, aimed a little lower. This is where so many people get stuck, not in the failure itself, but in the shame that follows. Shame tells us that failing means we are failures. It tells us that because something didn't work out, we are not worthy of success. But failure and shame are not the same thing. One is a necessary part of growth. The other is a lie we tell ourselves when we let our setbacks define our identity. The key is to separate the two, to recognize failure as information, not condemnation. And let's talk about fear, because so often what holds us back isn't the failure itself, but the fear of it. We hesitate to take risks because we don't want to deal with the embarrassment of getting it wrong. We avoid stepping out of our comfort zone and every time we allow the fear of failure to keep us from trying, we are choosing comfort over growth, safety over possibility. Some of the most groundbreaking inventions, the most powerful businesses, the most inspiring personal stories are built on a foundation of failure after failure. Not just small failures, but big, public, messy ones. And yet those failures didn't mark the end of their journey. They were turning points, wake-up calls, and in many cases, the exact lessons that led to breakthrough moments. So if failure is unavoidable, if it is woven into the very fabric of success, then the real question isn't how do I avoid failure, it's how do I respond to it when it happens, because it will happen more than once and in ways you don't expect. And in those moments, the choice isn't about whether you failed, it's about whether you're willing to keep going. We live in a world that often equates strength with invulnerability. We are told to be tough, to keep our guard up, to power through challenges without showing cracks. But here's the paradox. True strength, real, lasting, unshakable strength doesn't come from shutting out vulnerability. It comes from embracing it. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the willingness to show up, to take risks, to be seen for who we truly are. It is stepping into the unknown without guarantees, putting ourselves out there despite the fear of rejection, failure, or disappointment. And yet most of us spend so much of our lives avoiding it. We build walls, wear masks, and convince ourselves that if we just try hard enough, we can avoid feeling exposed. But the more we try to outrun vulnerability, the more we disconnect from the very things that give our lives meaning: authenticity, connection, growth. Resilience is not about being unbreakable. It's about learning how to put ourselves back together when life knocks us down. And that ability to rise, to keep going, to move through the hard things only develops when we allow ourselves to fully experience them. We cannot build resilience by pretending we don't feel pain, by suppressing our emotions, or by avoiding struggle. We build resilience by acknowledging the hard moments, by allowing ourselves to sit in the discomfort, and by choosing to keep going anyway. But let's be real, vulnerability is terrifying. It means admitting we don't have all the answers. It means opening ourselves up to the possibility of failure. It means letting people see the parts of us that aren't polished, controlled, or perfect. And in a world that rewards certainty and perfection, that can feel like a risk too big to take. But here's what we forget. Vulnerability is not the thing that breaks us, it's the thing that makes us stronger. Think about the moments in your life that truly shaped you, the ones that pushed you, challenged you, forced you to grow. I'd be willing to bet they weren't the easy moments. They were the moments that required courage, the moments that asked you to step outside of what was comfortable and into what was real. And what was real often meant being vulnerable. admitting you needed help, risking failure in pursuit of something bigger, having hard conversations, putting yourself out there despite the fear of rejection. We often try to protect ourselves from vulnerability because we think it will hurt less. But the truth is, avoiding vulnerability doesn't shield us from pain. It just isolates us from the experiences that build our resilience. It keeps us from forming deep connections, from taking risks that could change our lives, from becoming the fullest version of ourselves. It tricks us into believing that safety is the goal when in reality, growth is. And here's what makes it even harder. We live in a culture that tells us to always have it together, to never let them see us sweat, to push through and keep smiling even when we're struggling inside. But resilience isn't about pretending we aren't struggling. It's about having the courage to acknowledge our struggles and still move forward. It's about being willing to sit with discomfort rather than run from it. Knowing that each time we do, we become stronger, braver, and more capable of handling whatever comes next. So if resilience is what we're after, then vulnerability isn't the thing to avoid, it's the thing to embrace. Because resilience isn't built in the moments when everything is easy, it's built in the moments when we dare to show up exactly as we are and keep going no matter what. It happens almost without thinking. We scroll through social media, see someone else's success, and suddenly what we have doesn't feel like enough. We see someone excelling in their career, traveling the world, achieving their goals, and that small, sinking feeling creeps in. Why am I not there yet? What am I doing wrong? Comparison is a trap, and it's one that every single one of us falls into at some point. It's that subtle but powerful voice that tells us we're behind, that we're not doing enough, that our progress is somehow invalid because someone else seems to be ahead. And the worst part, it never ends. No matter how much we accomplish, there will always be someone doing something we perceive as better, bigger, or faster. The problem with comparison is that it distorts reality. We compare our behind-the-scenes struggles to someone else's highlight reel. We don't see their late nights, their failures, their doubts. We only see the curated version, the moments they choose to share, the polished successes that make everything look effortless. And when we measure ourselves against that illusion, we always come up short. But progress isn't a race, and success isn't a fixed destination. It's easy to look at someone else's timeline and feel like we're falling behind, but the truth is there is no universal timeline. We all start from different places with different challenges, different opportunities, different paths. No two journeys look the same, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Comparison is also incredibly distracting. The more time we spend looking at someone else's path, the less time we spend walking our own. It pulls our focus away from what actually matters, our own growth, our own progress, our own definition of success. We start making decisions based on what others are doing instead of what truly aligns with our goals, values, and passions. And in doing so, we lose ourselves. And let's talk about what comparison does to our self-worth. It turns accomplishments that once made us proud into things that suddenly feel small and insignificant. It makes us overlook our own progress because we're too busy measuring it against someone else's. It convinces us that if we aren't the best, the fastest, or the most successful, then we're not enough. But success isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being better than the person you were yesterday. We often admire people who seem to have it all figured out, but what we don't see is their struggle, their doubts, their moments of questioning whether they were on the right path. The truth is, everyone feels like they're falling behind sometimes. Everyone has moments of doubt. The difference between those who keep going and those who get stuck isn't talent or luck, it's focus. It's the ability to tune out the noise of comparison and stay committed to their own journey. The challenge then is to redefine success on our own terms, to remind ourselves that just because someone else is succeeding doesn't mean we're failing. To celebrate others without diminishing ourselves. To trust that our path, no matter how different, no matter how slow it might feel at times, is exactly where we are meant to be. Because at the end of the day, the only person we should be comparing ourselves to is the person we were yesterday. And the only real measure of progress is whether we are growing, learning, and moving forward in a way that feels true to us. In a world that thrives on instant gratification, we've been conditioned to expect rapid results. We want the quick fix, the shortcut to success, the overnight transformation, and when we don't see those dramatic changes right away, it's easy to feel like we're failing or not making any progress at all. But here's the thing we often forget: real lasting change doesn't happen in a single leap. It happens in the small, consistent steps we take day in and day out. The truth is, transformation is a series of small, sometimes seemingly insignificant actions that compound over time. Think about the power of small habits. A few minutes of reading every day doesn't feel like much, but over the course of a year, it adds up to hours of learning and growth. A single step toward a goal doesn't seem like progress, but over time, those steps build momentum and create a path forward. Every choice we make, no matter how small, is a part of the larger process of change. But small steps often don't get the recognition they deserve. In our world of big milestones and grand gestures, it's easy to overlook the quiet, everyday efforts. We celebrate the big wins, the promotions, the awards, the recognition, but the truth is, those big wins are built on a foundation of smaller victories. They are the result of countless quiet moments of effort, determination, and persistence. When we don't see immediate results, we can start to question whether it's even worth it to keep going. But the most important thing is that we do keep going. Take a moment and think about something you've worked on consistently over time. Maybe it's a skill you've developed, a habit you've built, or a relationship you've nurtured. Did it happen in a single moment? Did it change overnight? Probably not. But over time, those small daily decisions accumulated into something significant. The process might have been slow, but the impact was undeniable. The same principle applies to our goals and dreams. Whether we're working toward personal development, building a career, or pursuing a creative passion, progress doesn't happen all at once. It's the result of showing up day after day, even when the results aren't immediate or obvious. It's about trusting that each small action is moving us in the right direction, even when we can't see the whole picture yet. It's also important to remember that small steps don't always look the way we expect them to. Sometimes progress doesn't come in the form of a visible accomplishment. Sometimes it comes in the form of learning, growth, and resilience. It's easy to fall into the trap of measuring success only by visible outcomes, by how many followers we have, how much money we've made, or how many goals we've checked off our to-do lists. But true progress often comes in the quiet moments, the patience we practice when things don't go as planned, the courage we show when we take one more step despite the fear, the persistence we demonstrate when the finish line feels too far away to reach. When we start to focus on the small steps, we shift our perspective. We stop measuring success solely by the end result, and we begin to appreciate the process itself. We recognize that progress isn't always about how far we've come in one giant leap. It's about how much we've grown through each small, courageous choice. And those small choices over time create a ripple effect that leads to big impact. What's more, small steps give us the chance to adjust and recalibrate as we go. When we set out on a big goal, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. But when we break it down into smaller, manageable steps, we create space for flexibility and adaptation. Each step allows us to assess where we are, what we need, and how we can keep moving forward. It's not about perfection, it's about progress, and that progress is built one step at a time. Small steps also teach us the power of consistency. It's not the occasional burst of effort that leads to success, it's the daily, consistent action. It's the commitment to showing up even when we don't feel like it, to making progress, even when the finish line seems far away. Consistency, more than anything else, is the key to building momentum. And once we start building momentum, we start building something much bigger than we could ever achieve in one giant leap. The beauty of small steps is that they are within our control. We may not be able to control the timeline of our success, the challenges we face, or the obstacles that stand in our way, but we can control the actions we take each day. And it's those actions, those small but powerful choices, that eventually add up to something truly remarkable.